Discipline. A word so overused it's become hollow, associated with charts, with color-coded routines, with loud motivational speeches, with punishment, guilt, and grind. But if you strip it down, burn the noise, erase the productivity porn, discipline is not a system, it's a standard you hold when the world goes quiet, a standard you carry when no one's looking, a standard of self-respect. Most people treat discipline like software, something you install, something you program once and expect to run flawlessly. But Stoic discipline, that's hardware. It's embedded into your framework, into your decisions, into your self-image. It's not about doing more. It's about doing what aligns. You don't build discipline by forcing yourself into cold showers. You build it by deciding you'll no longer abandon yourself. Not when it's inconvenient, not when it's hard, not when it's unseen. Every time you say, "I'll start tomorrow," you teach yourself that your word means nothing. Every time you break your rhythm, you quietly tell your subconscious, "We don't finish, we collapse." This is deeper than goals. This is about dignity. Because if you don't respect your own structure, why should anyone else? If you don't hold your own line, don't be surprised when others cross it. And if you don't follow through on the small things, you'll never believe you can carry the big ones. Discipline is not about perfection. It's about non-negotiables. I don't skip workouts, not because I love them, but because I said I would. I don't check my phone first thing, because my focus is mine. I don't speak emotionally in conflict, and because I train to respond, not react. I don't eat like trash, not to impress anyone, but because I treat this body like it's going to war. These are not rules. These are reminders that I live with intention, that I have standards. You want self-respect? Stop begging for it. Earn it from yourself. Start by doing what you said you'd do, even when it's no longer exciting. Even when no one's watching. Even when you're tired of trying, because discipline isn't about how you feel. It's about who you said you'd be. The Stoics didn't train for aesthetics. They trained to remain unshaken. They didn't wake early to check a box. They woke early because clarity doesn't wait. They didn't seek comfort. They mastered discomfort because they knew life would not bend to their mood. And when the storms came, they didn't ask, "What's the system?" They said, "Let me return to my standard." This is the first law of Stoic mental order. Your discipline is a reflection of your relationship with yourself, not your mood, not your routine, not your ambition, your integrity. And if you compromise there, you'll compromise everywhere. But here's the truth. Most can't stomach. Discipline is lonely. You'll miss parties. You'll get called obsessive. You'll sit with cravings, with resistance, with the burning urge to fall back into ease. And still, you'll move forward. Not because it feels good, but because the person you're becoming is worth more than the moment's pleasure. So ask yourself, where do I break my word the most? What do I pretend is self-care, but is actually avoidance? What part of me keeps negotiating with mediocrity? Then draw the line, today, right now, and say, this ends here. Not because I'm tired, but because I've remembered who I am. You don't need more systems. You don't need more tools. You need a mirror and a moment of truth. Because once you decide your standards are non-negotiable, everything changes. Not immediately, but inevitably. And that moment, the one where you choose self-respect over self-soothing, that is the moment you stop chasing discipline and start living it. Discipline is not copy-paste. It's not one-size-fits-all. It's not some rigid military structure that you force onto your soul. True discipline, the kind that lasts, must be tailored. It must fit the contours of your nature. Not your weakness. Not your laziness. Your truth. The Stoics didn't teach uniformity. They taught alignment. They didn't say, everyone should wake at 4 a.m. and train for war. They said, know yourself, understand your tendencies, build around them, not to indulge, but to command. You see, most people fail at discipline not because they lack willpower, but because they borrow blueprints. They build someone else's structure. They chase someone else's routine. They imitate someone else's fire. But you're not them. You never will be. Your discipline must fit your nature, or it will eventually collapse under the weight of someone else's life. Some people thrive in silence. Some need music. Some rise early. Some move late. Some are lions. Some are wolves. Both are dangerous in their time. So the question isn't, what's the perfect routine? It's, what's the truest structure that brings out the most dangerous version of me? You want to be consistent? Then stop forcing systems that insult your instincts. Stop shaming your rhythm. Stop pretending that following someone else's checklist will unlock your inner order. You have to build it your way, from the ground up, brick by brick, with awareness. That means knowing what triggers your collapse, knowing when your mind lies to you, knowing which hours you shine, knowing when rest becomes avoidance, knowing when action becomes self-sabotage, and then shaping your day like a weapon, a personal weapon, not to impress, but to cut through the chaos, your chaos. The Stoics understood nature. They watched it, respected it, aligned with it. They didn't try to dominate the river. They flowed with it until they could redirect it with minimal resistance. That's what you need. Low resistance structure, high consequence action, a system that's so it disappears into instinct. So you don't have to force it, you just live it. Ask yourself, where does my energy naturally rise? When do I fall into distraction? Where am I most decisive? What drains me fastest? Then shape your rules accordingly. This is not indulgence. This is engineering. This is design-level self-mastery. Don't try to copy their schedule. Build your fortress. In your time, on your soil, with your bricks. And when it's finished, you'll look around and realize, this doesn't look like anyone else's life. Good. It wasn't supposed to. That's the second Stoic law. Your discipline must match your nature, or it will always feel like a cage, and cages can't hold fire. They only delay the explosion. But when your system fits your soul, that's not a cage, that's a forge. The world will not calm down. The noise will not stop. The chaos will not apologize. You can't wait for silence to find your discipline. You have to build it inside the storm. Because here's the hard truth. If your structure depends on your environment, you don't have structure. You have fragile preferences, and fragile preferences collapse the moment the world stops cooperating. Traffic, distraction, criticism, uncertainty, bad sleep, no support. If all it takes is a bad morning to ruin your code, you never had a code to begin with. The Stoics didn't build their minds in monasteries, they built them in battlefields. Marcus Aurelius was the emperor of Rome, not a monk. He governed war, politics, disease, betrayal. And yet, amidst all that chaos, he carved out stillness. He didn't wait for peace. He built internal law, unshakable, unbreakable, personal. That's what you must build now, not just discipline, but discipline that survives turbulence, mental order that functions under pressure, standards that don't waver when things go wrong. Because they were never built on conditions. You want to win? You want to rise above the average? Then stop needing peace to find power. Train yourself to hold the line when everything pushes against you. That means meditating while your mind screams, training even when the schedule shifts, holding your word when no one's watching, finishing your tasks when your mood is trash, regulating yourself when emotions try to hijack you. That's law, not law you post about, law you live by. Most people try to solve chaos by managing the world, changing routines, shifting blame, tweaking apps, asking others to behave differently. But Stoics knew the one truth most avoid. You don't need a calmer world, you need a stronger inner court. You're not the weather, you're the mountain. So build law like they did, not written in apps, written in your nervous system, not dependent on motivation, dependent on identity. You are the type of person who does not fold. You are the type of person who resets, not reacts. You are the type of person who executes regardless of noise. This isn't ego, it's structure. Make it clear, I train even when I'm anxious. I speak with calm even when insulted. I show up even when I feel doubt. I move toward order even when surrounded by disorder. And when you break that line, you don't spiral, you don't shame, you return. Because the law is internal, and it doesn't disappear when you fall. It calls you back. You don't need the world to agree. You don't need the schedule to be perfect. You don't need people to support you. You need one thing: unbreakable law, written in you. Create rituals that don't collapse under pressure. Write standards so clear, so personal that even your weakest self can follow them. And test them. Test them in chaos. Test them when you're sick. Test them when everything is late, loud, messy, unfair. Because if they hold up there, they'll hold up anywhere. You are not here to be balanced. You're here to be anchored. Balance shifts with every wind. Anchoring means, even if it shakes, I stay. Even if it roars, I move. Even if it breaks, I rebuild. This is not philosophy. This is war, mental war. And the soldiers who survive are not the strongest. They're the clearest. They know the code. They live the law. They don't depend on feeling. They depend on choice. So write it down. Burn it in. Make it visceral. Make it yours. Because external chaos is not going away. But internal order, that's yours to command. Weakness doesn't show up with a warning. It doesn't kick down the door. It slides in, quiet, polite, and dressed like rest, like kindness to self, like just this once. And before you know it, you've made a deal. A deal that trades long-term power for short-term peace. A deal that sacrifices the version of you you're building for the comfort of the version you said you'd outgrow. Weakness is clever. It won't tell you to quit outright. It will whisper, "You've done enough today. One miss won't matter. Everyone else is resting. You deserve this." And suddenly, you're back at square one. Not because you're lazy, because you negotiated. The Stoics didn't negotiate with weakness. They stared it down. Epictetus taught, every habit and faculty is preserved and increased by corresponding actions. The habit of walking by walking, the habit of running by running. Therefore, if you want to be a good man, act like one. They didn't wait for courage, they acted it. They didn't wait for energy, they moved anyway. They didn't wait for the mood. They honored the law, even when it hurt. You don't rise by hoping weakness will go away. You rise by stopping the negotiation, right there, at the table. When it offers you the out, this is how it sounds. Just 5 more minutes in bed. No up. Skip this workout, you're exhausted. Move. Now. You don't need to speak up, let it pass. Say it. This isn't a big deal. No one will know. You'll know. That's enough. Weakness can't defeat you unless you agree. But every time you just this once yourself into comfort, you teach your system. Weakness gets a seat at the table. Remove the chair. This isn't about cruelty to self. It's about clarity. Because clarity says I don't punish myself, but I don't lie to myself either. Look, you're not always going to feel like showing up. Your mind will rebel, your body will resist, your emotions will demand comfort. And that's normal. But what's not normal is making weakness a negotiating partner. It doesn't deserve a voice in the room. Here's the key. Weakness will always try to sound reasonable. It's never extreme. It's just soft. But your life doesn't get built-in softness, it gets built-in standard. And standards don't argue, they stand. You want to be free? Then stop justifying what you said you'd rise above. Stop romanticizing collapse. Stop hiding self-betrayal behind self-care. This isn't about punishment. This is about not giving in when it matters most. Train it like a reflex. The moment weakness speaks, interrupt it. The moment the excuse rises, move. The moment your system says later, say now. Do it gently if you must, but do it immediately, because hesitation is how weakness wins. You think strength is loud? It's not. Strength is quiet refusal. Refusal to fold. Refusal to lie. Refusal to settle. It's not about being hard all the time. It's about knowing when to be firm and not flinch. You're not here to be perfect. But you're not here to be a victim of your old patterns either. You're here to grow, to earn peace by earning control, to build a self that doesn't need permission from mood, and you don't build that self by arguing with weakness. You build it by cutting the conversation short. Next time you hear it, next time the soft lie shows up, don't respond, don't justify, don't explain, just act. You already know what must be done. There's discipline, and then there's identity-based discipline. The first is fragile. It wavers with mood. It's triggered by motivation. It asks questions like, how do I feel today? Do I want this bad enough? Can I push through again? But identity-based discipline? That's different. It doesn't ask. It acts. It doesn't need reminders. It remembers who it is. You see, most people treat discipline like a tool, something they use when needed, something external, something they do. But Stoic discipline, it's internal. It's who you are. When you attach discipline to identity, you don't say, I'm trying to be consistent. You say, I'm the kind of person who keeps his word. I train because that's what I do, not because I feel like it. I don't skip. Period. I don't let myself spiral, not because I'm perfect, but because I don't betray myself. That shift changes everything. Because now discipline isn't an event, it's a standard of self. This is what the Stoics understood. Character isn't built in crisis, it's revealed there. But it's built in identity, daily, silently, internally. And the most powerful identity isn't loud, it's clear. Ask yourself, who am I when no one's watching? Who am I when things get hard? What kind of man am I when comfort is calling? Your real discipline begins in those answers. because you'll never outwork your identity. But once your identity is discipline, you stop needing to push so hard. You just live aligned. This is why people fail after big motivational highs. They sprint with no route because they never became someone new. They just did new things, temporarily. But when the identity stays the same, the results fade, because actions follow identity, not the other way around. Here's what to do. Stop asking how you feel. Start asking, who am I becoming? Stop pushing randomly. Start building principles that anchor your day. Stop chasing goals you haven't trained your self-image to carry. The Stoics didn't just say wake early or control your emotions. They said, you are a philosopher. You are a man of virtue. You are one who chooses reason over impulse. It wasn't about doing, it was about being. So create your own personal identity code. I'm the type of person who finishes what he starts. I'm the type who doesn't need to talk. I deliver. I'm the type who leaves no task half-built. I am a person of structure, not for image but for honor. Write it, memorize it, live by it. And when the moment comes where your mind wants to break, you won't have to decide who you are. You'll know. That's the power of identity-based discipline. It doesn't ask for motivation. It doesn't collapse under stress. It returns to one phrase. This is who I am. And that phrase? That's armor. Because when discipline becomes your identity, quitting becomes betrayal. And self-betrayal, that's the one pain you refuse to live with ever again. So stop trying to be disciplined. Start being someone for whom discipline is normal. And when that shift happens, you'll stop chasing the life you want and start living it effortlessly, ruthlessly, proudly. Because you became the type of person who was always going to get there. You've trained your body. You've worked on your discipline. You've organized your time. But until you master your emotions, you're still at risk. Because nothing will hijack your system faster than untrained emotional reflexes. You don't lose discipline because of laziness. You lose it when emotion overrides structure, anger, insecurity, fear, shame, doubt. These are the things that crash plans, break routines, derail clarity, and destroy consistency. If you don't learn to lead your nervous system, it will lead you. It will steer your actions, twist your voice, numb your focus, and soon you'll look back and wonder, how did I go from grounded to gone? The answer? Emotional instability, unrecognized, unregulated, untamed. The Stoics didn't suppress emotion. They commanded it, not through denial, through understanding. They trained themselves to observe emotion like weather, passing, real, but never in control. Epictetus said, we are disturbed not by events but by the view which we take of them. That view, your interpretation, is your inner command center. So how do you reclaim command? First, accept that emotion will rise. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a signal. But signals aren't orders. They're data. You feel it, but you don't let it drive. When the anger spikes, you pause. You don't strike. You breathe. Not to suppress, to transmute. When the anxiety creeps in, you don't run. You sit. You study it, you ask, what thought did I believe that created this state? And right there, you shift from victim to observer, from reactor to leader. This is what inner command looks like. Staying still when panic rises, speaking slower. When heat surges, walking away when your ego wants to win. Listening when your fear wants to interrupt, moving forward when doubt tries to paralyze. You want elite discipline? Train your response to your emotions. Because if you can't hold steady when your feelings are loud, you'll never build anything that lasts. Temporary strength breaks under emotional heat. But Stoic discipline? It absorbs. It redirects. It endures. This doesn't mean you become robotic. It means you become anchored. Your emotion gets to speak but not command. You don't fear sadness. You feel it, fully. But you don't make decisions inside it. You don't deny fear. You face it. But you don't let it write your strategy. Create a rule. I don't act until I return to center. And that rule will save your life more times than you can count. Because no plan, no discipline, no routine matters if your emotions can cancel them at any moment. So begin now. Every time you feel the rush, train the pause. Every time you want to lash out, train the breath. Every time you want to retreat, train the stillness. Not to suppress, to transcend. You are not your emotions. You are the one who directs their energy. Turn your rage into precision. Turn your grief into grounding. Turn your fear into forward motion. Emotion is fuel, and you are the driver. The strongest man in the room isn't the loudest. It's the one whose flame doesn't burn the building. It warms, it commands, it stays. So from now on, remember this. I lead my state. My state does not lead me. And in that moment, you don't just feel powerful. You become untouchable. There's a silence that breaks people, and a silence that builds them. One isolates, the other fortifies. Most people fear solitude because they've never trained in it. They confuse being alone with being abandoned. They feel restless when no one's watching, when no one replies, when there's no performance to give. So they reach for noise, for screens, for people who don't even honor them, just to avoid the feeling of being with themselves. But here's what the Stoics knew. You are never more powerful than when you can sit in stillness without needing to escape it. Solitude isn't a weakness. It's a weapon. Controlled solitude is not withdrawal. It's alignment. It's what happens when you deliberately remove yourself from the noise to refine the signal. You go inward. You face your real thoughts. You sit with discomfort until it turns into clarity. You shut the world out not to disappear, but to reappear sharper. We're conditioned to stay stimulated. Scroll, swipe, check, respond. Because if we stop, the silence confronts us, and in that silence lives the truth we avoid. But that truth, that's where power lives. Because when you can sit alone without the fear of missing out, without the fear of not being seen, without the hunger for constant validation, you become undeniable. The Stoics practiced solitude like ritual. Marcus Aurelius would retreat to his tent, surrounded by war, by politics, by pressure, and right, not to share, but to remember himself. He wrote not to publish, but to anchor. That's what you must do. Retreat with intention. Silence the stream. Turn off everything that dilutes your mind, and then listen to your breath, to your doubts, to your vision, not to judge them, but to reclaim them. Controlled solitude is where you train. Resilience without reaction, clarity without counsel, vision without noise, identity without external mirrors. It's where you remember, I am enough, not because the world says so, because I decided so. Here's the mistake most make. They only practice solitude when forced, when life collapses, when people leave, when heartbreak hits. But real strength comes from choosing solitude before you need it, using it as armor, as realignment, as mental sharpening. Not because you're antisocial, But because you refuse to be mentally dependent, you must train like this. 1 hour a day, no talking, no scrolling, no reaching, just presence. 1 evening a week, no plans. No entertainment, no distraction, just thinking, writing, walking, silence. 1 reset a month, no schedule, no pressure. Just you. Returning to the core. And in that space you will meet the version of you who doesn't need to explain himself. Controlled solitude is how you rewire your impulses, heal your decision-making, purge borrowed dreams, build patience into your nervous system. Remember what actually matters, because when you're alone, your real desires rise to the surface. Not the desires you copy, not the desires they sell you, the ones your soul whispers in silence. So don't run from solitude, run to it, with intention, with reverence, with fire. Because if you can sit alone, without craving escape, without reaching for the nearest noise, without begging the world to distract you, then you've built something most people never will: inner command and outer stillness. The Stoics didn't survive isolation. They used it to reflect, to study, to sharpen. Do the same. Choose solitude before it chooses you. Make it your edge. Make it your sanctuary. Make it your forge. And when you return to the world, you'll be different. Not louder, but clearer. Not harder, but stronger. Not emptier, but full of something unshakable. You. Starting is exciting. Fresh energy. Fresh goals. A clean slate. It feels like rebirth. But finishing? That's different. Finishing is war. Finishing is where the mood dies, where the resistance grows, where doubt becomes loud and the spark that started everything has long gone dim. Most people start. Very few finish. And the ones who do, they don't rely on excitement. They build an impulse to finish, a reflex, a law, a personal command that says, if I start it, I finish it. No matter what, no matter when, no matter how long it takes. This isn't a motivational slogan, it's a mental structure. Because when you train yourself to finish, you're not just completing tasks. You're building identity-based self-trust. You're becoming the kind of man who can't walk away from what he committed to, even when no one would blame him if he did. Why does this matter? Because unfinished work leaves open loops in your psychology. It leaks energy. It trains avoidance. It weakens your personal gravity. Every time you start and abandon, you quietly tell your nervous system, we don't follow through. And that pattern doesn't stay in the gym. It doesn't stay in the project. It bleeds into your relationships, into your habits, into your confidence. The Stoics had a word for this. Telos. The end. The purpose. The aim. They didn't just act. They acted towards something, and they closed the loop. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, at every moment, keep a strong grip on the task at hand. Finish it with method, with seriousness, and with self-respect. He knew the discipline. To finish wasn't about productivity, it was about honor. You want strength? Train your finish. That means, finish the workout, no matter how you feel at rep 7. Finish the conversation, even if it's hard. Finish the journal entry, even when your mind wants to quit. Finish the project, even if no one cares anymore. Finish what you promised, especially when no one is watching. This is not about perfection. This is about pattern, because patterns shape belief, and belief shapes your ability to move under pressure. Here's how you build the impulse to finish. Shrink the task, but never shrink the standard. Don't lower the bar for effort, but do make it winnable. Momentum comes from movement, not size. Name the consequence of quitting. What does it cost you to stop here? Not just today, but long term. What belief do you reinforce by giving up early? Visualize the end, not the work, the win, the clarity, the completion, the quiet satisfaction of follow-through. Hold that image. Build desire around that version of you. But even more than strategy, you need a rule. A personal law that says, I do not leave unfinished what I have touched. It could be small, washing the dishes, sending the email, closing the tab, but it teaches your brain, we finish. And that belief, it will echo into everything. You don't have a motivation problem, you have a completion deficit. And the only fix for that is finishing, day after day, until it becomes who you are. Because when you become the kind of man who finishes, your confidence shifts, not because you won something, but because you prove something to yourself, that you are the type who delivers, who honors, who sees it through. And that feeling, it doesn't require anyone else to know, because you'll know that's power, not the loud kind, not the celebrated kind, the private sacred kind that only those who finish truly understand. Your mind writes the plan, but it's your body that executes it. You can visualize success. You can journal your goals. You can script the perfect day. But if your body isn't trained to carry discipline, the system collapses under its own ambition. Discipline is not just mental, it's physical, because your body holds the weight of your choices. It absorbs your habits. It carries your stress. It reflects your patterns. And when your body is undisciplined, your mind has to work twice as hard to stay on track. You think skipping sleep doesn't matter? That energy crash at 2 p.m. becomes the reason you scroll instead of build. You think food doesn't matter? That blood sugar spike becomes brain fog, and now you've lost the will to complete the task. You think movement doesn't matter? That untrained posture, shallow breath, tight hips and slouched spine, they all become signals to your system that say, we are prey, not predator. We are surviving, not leading. We are escaping, not engaging. The Stoics were warriors, not in title, but in structure. They walked, they trained, They prepared their bodies as vessels for clear thought, strong will, and emotional mastery. They knew, a weak body invites chaos. A strong body contains it. You don't need to be a bodybuilder. You don't need to chase aesthetics. But you do need a body that can hold your discipline when your mind starts to drift. This is not about six-packs. This is about structure. A body that rises early without begging. A body that holds stillness when stress peaks. A body that doesn't tremble in discomfort. A body that finishes what it starts. A body that says, I don't need a perfect environment. I am the environment. And yes, it's hard, because movement is inconvenient. Training takes time. Nutrition takes effort. But what takes more effort? Trying to build an empire in a body that's begging you to sit down, shut off, and scroll. So build the machine. Train daily, even if it's simple. Don't negotiate with your workout. Make it as sacred as your word. You're not just burning calories, you're building capacity. Capacity to carry tension, to absorb stress, to delay gratification, to act without hesitation. Every rep you complete, when tired, is not about muscle. It's about message, a message to your mind that says, when we say we move, we move. Discipline loves routine, but routine needs mobility, stamina, blood flow, stillness under pressure. You can't meditate in chaos if your body can't sit still. You can't lead from peace if your spine folds every time life leans on it. You can't show up daily if your body is dragging like dead weight behind your mind's ambition. So start small. Walk, stretch, train resistance, breathe deep, cut sugar, sleep early, not for looks, for leverage. The Stoics weren't just thinkers, they were soldiers of clarity, and soldiers train the vessel. You want emotional regulation? Build lungs that know how to hold breath. Build legs that can walk long distances without complaint. Build hands that don't tremble under pressure. Your body is not separate from your discipline. It is the container for it, and a broken container leaks everything, even your best intentions. So respect your body, not as a temple, as a forge. This is where heat meets pressure to create a structure that holds when the world says collapse. You want to be a man of discipline? Then build a body that says so, before you ever speak. Discipline is not about how much you can do, it's about how much you're willing to say no to. In a world that worships yes to opportunity, yes to comfort, yes to approval, yes to distraction, the real warriors are the ones who know how to stand tall and say, no, not this, not now, not anymore. Because every time you say yes to something that violates your values, dilutes your standards, or steals your clarity, you're not being kind. You're not being open-minded, you're leaking power. The Stoics didn't try to do everything, they mastered a narrow path. They said no to luxury, no to indulgence, no to social drift, no to wasted energy. And in that space, they found something rare: freedom through refusal. Modern life teaches you that yes is polite, that no is harsh, that you're supposed to be agreeable, pleasant, available, accommodating. But men of clarity are not always available, because they are always anchored, and anchoring requires boundaries. Clear, deliberate, non-negotiable lines that protect your time, energy, and attention, like your life depends on it, because it does. Here's the truth: every yes has a cost. You say yes to late-night scrolling. You say no to morning momentum. You say yes to junk food. You say no to mental clarity. You say yes to every request. You say no to your mission. You say yes to staying comfortable. You say no to becoming powerful. So what's the solution? You train the refusal reflex. You develop the muscle of no. Not with aggression, not with apology, with precision. Say no like a warrior. Calm, direct, unbothered. No flinching, no guilt, no explanation. Not because you're rude, because you're clear. You don't owe anyone your bandwidth. You don't owe access to your peace. You don't owe yourself to every shiny opportunity, because some things look good but cost too much, and only warriors of discipline see the price tag before the promise. This is your new philosophy. If it doesn't serve the mission, it doesn't make the schedule. That means no to conversations that spiral into gossip. No to relationships that drain more than they fill. No to dopamine loops disguised as rest. No to impulse purchases, impulsive reactions, impulsive distractions. No to the watered-down version of yourself that keeps asking permission to say no. The ability to say no isn't the loss of connection. It's the protection of direction. You're not rejecting the world. You're preserving your world, your mind, your focus, your internal empire. Look at the most grounded men, the ones who seem untouchable, unrushed, unbothered. They all have one thing in common: selective access. Their no is not harsh. It's holy, it protects what they've built, and what they're building and can't be shared with everything. You want more peace? Say no more often. You want more focus? Say no more sharply. You want more self-respect? Say no without flinching. Because every no you say from alignment is a yes to the man you're becoming. So train it today. Say no to the second scroll. Say no to the lazy meal. Say no to the person you know isn't for you. Say no to the inner voice that says, just this, once. And when they ask why, you won't need to explain. Because your life will be the explanation. We live in a world obsessed with comfort, with treating yourself, with softening the edges, with giving in, because you deserve it. But here's a truth most people don't want to hear. Discipline is the most powerful form of self-love. Not bubble baths, not escape, not binge-watching your way through burnout. Discipline, the ability to say, I care about myself too much to keep breaking promises to myself. I love my future enough to be uncomfortable today. I will not abandon myself mud again. Discipline is not restriction, it's respect. The kind of respect that says, I am worthy of living with structure. I am worthy of systems that support me. I am worthy of becoming who I said I'd be. Anyone can love themselves when they're winning, when they feel good, when they're admired, but real self-love is shown when you still choose effort. Even when no one sees it. Even when your mood betrays you. Even when quitting whispers like comfort. The Stoics understood this. They didn't define love as softness. They defined it as standards. To love yourself was to live in a way that honors the best of you, not the most convenient version. Seneca said, no man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. To face adversity, voluntarily, is an act of devotion. It's the quiet statement, I'm willing to be uncomfortable now, so I don't collapse later. That's not self-punishment. That's self-protection. Because here's the brutal truth. The world won't always go easy on you. There will be heartbreak. There will be loss. There will be failure. There will be seasons where everything feels heavier than you can carry. And in those seasons, you don't need a new affirmation. You need a history of action that tells you, I've stood before. I can stand again. Discipline is love in motion. It's what keeps you from collapsing into old patterns, from running into people you've already outgrown, from trading long-term joy for short-term relief. You love yourself? Then stop soothing yourself to death. Start strengthening yourself for life. That means, wake when you said you would. Eat to fuel, not numb. Speak truth, even when it trembles. Say no, even when it costs comfort. Train, even when your body screams for softness. Finish, even when no one's keeping score. You're not gentle with yourself when you let your standards fall. You're gentle with yourself when you raise your standards high enough to hold your soul, even on your worst day. Self-love is not always a hug. Sometimes it's a push, a walk into the storm, a decision to delay the craving so that clarity can emerge. You don't need more ease. You need inner evidence. Evidence that you don't give up. Evidence that you keep your word. Evidence that you're not just a person with gold, but a person with laws. And when you stack enough of that evidence, you don't just feel better, you become undeniable. So stop treating yourself like you're fragile. You're not. You are capable. You are responsible. You are worthy of living with systems that serve your mission. That's self-love, not what you feel, what you do. And what you do today will become the foundation you lean on when life gets loud. So love yourself enough to live with structure. Love yourself enough to demand more. Love yourself enough to say, This version of me deserves to rise. This future of mine deserves to be protected, and I will not abandon either. At the end of the day, when all the noise is gone, when the followers fade, when the goals blur, when no one is watching, what remains is how you live. Not what you said, not what you believed, not what you posted, but what you did. Daily, consistently, silently. You can read the Stoics. You can quote Marcus. You can highlight every line in Seneca's letters, but until it touches your habits, it's just decoration. Real philosophy is not an idea, it's a discipline, because your habits reveal what you truly worship. Your calendar reveals what you truly value. Your routine reveals what you truly believe. Everything else is just theory. You want to live with honor? Train daily. You want clarity? Clean your system. Sleep, diet, digital space. You want peace? Enforce standards. You want identity? Finish what you start. You want power? Act, no matter how you feel. That's not productivity. That's philosophy in motion. The Stoics weren't interested in theories. They were obsessed with practice. Marcus Aurelius didn't write to impress. He wrote to remember, to remind himself what mattered when life pulled at him, because he knew the greatest threat to virtue is drift, and drift happens when you stop, treating your discipline as your code. You don't rise by knowing more. You rise by doing the same few things and the right things, over and over again, until they become who you are. So let this be the last law. Your discipline is your philosophy, not your favorite quote, not your reading list, not your self-image, your actions, your defaults, your response under pressure. That's the doctrine. That's the creed. If you train even when tired, that's your stoicism. If you speak calmly, even when tested, that's your stoicism. If you return to your structure, even after failure, that's your stoicism. If you move toward truth, even when it's uncomfortable, you are living like the greats, not copying them, becoming them. Because stoicism was never meant to be framed. It was meant to be embodied, and the most unshakable form of embodiment is a life that doesn't need to be explained. A life that when people see it, they feel something deeper, something sharper, something anchored. You want legacy? Don't talk, don't trend. Live aligned, and let your schedule be your scripture. Let your routines be your meditation. Let your discipline be the proof. You don't need to impress. You need to show up, to build, to train, to serve, to wake each day and say, this is the path I chose. And I walk it, not because it's easy, but because it's mine. You won't always be perfect, but you can always be faithful. Faithful to the code. Faithful to the higher self you're becoming. Faithful to the standard that raised you from mediocrity into quiet mastery. So write this into your bones. I am what I repeatedly do. I don't need to be seen. I don't need to be praised. I just need to live my code and let the rest unfold. No more theory, no more delay, no more drift. You have the laws. Now live them, because at the end of it all, they won't remember what you said. They'll remember what you became.